The rain had just stopped in Ouagadougou when the armored sedan pulled up to the presidential compound. Elon Musk's private envoy stepped out first, sharp suit, neutral smile, and a silver briefcase carrying a proposal. A delegation of Burkinabe officials led him through the marble corridors, past portraits of revolutionaries and maps of mineral zones once stripped by foreign contractors. At the end of the hall, waiting behind a solid wooden desk, was Ibrahim Traoré. The envoy cleared his throat and began politely. "Mr. President, Mr. Musk appreciates your desire for national development. That's why he's offering an exclusive technology partnership. Full infrastructure, satellite coverage, and electric transport, in exchange for long-term access to your lithium fields." Traoré didn't react. He simply studied the documents, flipping through pages covered in corporate terminology and projections about African workforce potential. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but every word was sharp. "This proposal describes your benefit, not ours." The envoy smiled a little too confidently. "With respect, Your Excellency. Africa works with us because we build what the world needs." He paused, then added the sentence that was supposed to seal the deal. "Like it or not, Africa works for us." The room fell completely silent. Traoré slowly closed the folder and looked up, eyes steady like stone. "No," he said. "Maybe yesterday we did. But not anymore. We no longer work for anyone." Before the envoy could answer, Traoré stood. "This land, these resources, belong to a people who died defending them. You walk in with contracts, others walked in with guns. The only difference is the language." The envoy quietly gathered his briefcase. There was no handshake. No polite smile. Only a sentence from Traoré as he turned to leave. "Tell Mr. Musk to build rockets, not chains." The envoy's car hadn't even cleared the palace gates when Elon Musk opened a live video briefing from his office in California. His advisors tried to soften the report, calling it a temporary setback and a cultural misunderstanding, but Musk leaned back in his chair with that familiar half-smirk. "So," he said, fingers tapping the table, "he thinks Africa no longer works for anyone?" No one in the room replied. The silence was answer enough. In Ouagadougou, Traoré wasn't celebrating. He gathered his economic and military advisors in the Situation Room. On the wall, a satellite image of a vast lithium deposit glowed red, a deposit that had already attracted 2 foreign multinationals and 3 silent intelligence services. "From this moment," he said, "no negotiations behind closed doors. We bring every offer to the people. If anyone wants our resources, they speak to the nation, not to me alone." Later that evening, Musk posted a carefully crafted tweet. "Some leaders still don't understand global cooperation. Technology doesn't wait for nationalism." It received millions of likes within minutes. But in West Africa, the reaction was different. The tweet sparked a storm of replies, most repeating a single phrase. "We are not your factory." The next morning, Traoré visited a rural lithium site, no cameras, no press team. Miners gathered around him as he spoke plainly. They offered to build roads and satellites, but the price was our freedom. You don't trade your spine for a faster highway. An old miner stepped forward and simply said, "Then we keep digging with our own hands." Traoré nodded. "And we build with our own hands." As he walked back to the convoy, his chief of staff received an encrypted message. U.S. analysts had just increased their risk rating on Burkina Faso. Investors were pulling out. Pressure had begun. Traoré paused for a moment, staring at the dusty horizon. "They're not punishing us," he said quietly. "They're testing us." The pressure came fast. Within 48 hours, 2 international banks froze development loans to Burkina Faso, citing concerns over geopolitical uncertainty. A European tech group cancelled a planned fiber optic project, claiming logistical challenges. On the news channels, Analysts discussed Traoré as if he were a naive idealist turning his back on progress. In Silicon Valley, Musk hosted a closed-door meeting with top executives. "We don't need their approval," he said firmly. "We just need access. If they won't sign, we make the negotiations more convincing." The room understood exactly what that meant. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré reviewed a new intelligence report. It listed an increase in anonymous cyber activity around national energy infrastructure. Attempts at economic sabotage had already started. His security chief closed the folder. "This isn't business anymore, sir. It's a confrontation." Traoré didn't raise his voice. "Then we confront it. But not like them. No panic. No fear." That same evening, he called for a national broadcast. Across the country, people gathered around radios and old televisions as his voice rang out across the airwaves. "They tell us we must accept their terms or be left behind. They tell us Africa only moves when someone else pulls the strings. But today, we pull our own." There were no applause lines. No grand theatrics. Just clear words and the quiet power of someone who actually believed them. After the speech, messages flooded social media under a single hashtag. #WeBuildForUs. Videos appeared of miners holding shovels. Young engineers repairing old transformers with hand tools. Farmers standing in lithium fields holding signs that simply read, "Not for sale." In California, Musk scrolled through the images without emotion. "Fine," he said coldly. "If they don't want to work with us, we'll show them what happens when we work around them." The next strike didn't come from a boardroom or a press release. It came from the sky. At 3:17 a.m., a reconnaissance drone, unmarked but unmistakably US-made, crossed into Burkinabe airspace over the lithium fields. It flew low and slow, mapping every access road, storage facility, and guard post with surgical precision. Within minutes, a second drone appeared behind it. Burkina's radar operators tracked both silently, waiting for authorization. When Traoré received the alert, he didn't hesitate. "Shadow protocol," he said calmly. Shadow protocol wasn't an attack. It was visibility. Within minutes, state television interrupted its programming and began broadcasting the live radar feed, 2 foreign drones clearly visible over sovereign territory. No commentary, no propaganda, just raw proof. By dawn, the footage was all over the continent. Headlines in West Africa read, "They don't negotiate, they scan." In Washington, damage control kicked in quickly. Officials called the incident a technical navigation error. Musk posted a smiling emoji and the line, "Crazy how everyone thinks they're being watched," but nobody in Burkina Faso was laughing. At a village near the mining site, elders gathered to decide next steps. One of them, a retired teacher, said quietly, "We used to wait for the government to act. Now we act with the government." That afternoon, volunteer watch posts were established on every ridge facing the lithium zone. Not with rockets, just with radios, binoculars, and eyes that refused to look away. One of the younger volunteers spray-painted a message on a stone at the top of the hill. "Africa works for Africa." When Traoré visited the site later that day, he simply nodded. "This is the field," he said, echoing his own words, "and we're already standing on it." The escalation continued, but it shifted in tone. Instead of drones or banks, the offensive moved into the media. Major international outlets suddenly ran coordinated stories describing Traoré as anti-development, anti-technology, even radicalized. One headline read, "Burkina Faso turns back on global progress." In Silicon Valley, Musk retweeted the headline with a short caption, "Hard to save people who reject the future." The comment exploded online. Some applauded. Others asked a simple question under the post, or are they just saving themselves from you? In Ouagadougou's streets, street artists responded faster than any government statement ever could. Overnight, a mural appeared on a downtown wall, Elon's face painted in grayscale, smiling over a chain. In front of him, Traoré holding a pair of broken links. Underneath, the words, "The future isn't for sale." When Traoré saw the mural, he didn't issue a directive. He simply ordered it to remain untouched. "That," he said, "is the voice of the people." That same day, a shipment of imported communication hardware funded by Musk's company was detained at the port. Customs officers discovered hidden relay chips capable of remote data extraction. The shipment was seized, and the contents were publicly displayed on national TV. "Our partners bring technology," said the Interior Minister in the broadcast. "Our adversaries bring control, and call it partnership." The video went viral in minutes. That night, Traoré stood on the palace balcony and watched as people gathered below with candles in their hands. No one chanted. No one marched. They simply stood in silence, facing the presidency, as if saying, "We're still here." He whispered to himself, "So are they." But his voice was not afraid, only certain. At 4:02 the next morning, a coded alert came through the Presidential Command Center. Operators at the Northern Communication Hub reported a major cyber breach, an attempt to override the national broadcast network and replace it with an external signal. Within seconds the backup analog system kicked in, rerouting the entire network onto old radio towers built decades earlier. Grainy but functional, the signal held. Instead of foreign programming, the broadcast delivered a single sentence spoken by Traoré himself, pre-recorded for this exact scenario. "If they try to speak over us, we will speak through them." The cyber attack failed. But something else succeeded. The population understood now that the fight was far from symbolic. It was real, technical, and relentless. In California, Musk looked over a new intelligence brief. It stated plainly, "Burkinabe leadership is resilient. Civilian mobilization is unprecedented. Attempts at destabilization have only strengthened internal cohesion." His fingers drummed against the desk. "Then let's break that cohesion," he muttered. Back in Ouagadougou, Traoré called an emergency meeting, not with generals, but with community leaders. Farmers, teachers, local doctors and youth organizers filled the palace hall. No suits, no military ranks, just citizens. "They will now try to divide us," he said. "They will use fear, rumor, and hunger. But remember this, nothing defeats a nation that refuses to turn against itself." The room was silent for a moment. Then an old woman in the front row stood up and simply said, "We will share our bread before we sell our dignity." The whole hall responded with a single word, "Yes." By nightfall, stories spread across the country of farmers sending surplus grain to neighboring villages and mechanics repairing vehicles for free. No one asked. People just acted. And in a soft corner of a lithium field, someone planted a wooden sign in the ground. On it, written in black paint, "We build, even when they try to break." Musk watched the next wave of satellite footage in disbelief. Instead of chaos or food riots, he saw Burkinabe citizens repairing bridges, organizing medical caravans, and working side by side in the lithium fields that were supposed to be the center of the dispute. "They're turning pressure into fuel," one analyst said. Musk didn't respond, he simply closed the laptop with a sharp click. Meanwhile, a classified memo reached the U.S. State Department. It warned that continued economic coercion may result in regional backlash and the spread of anti-Western unity movements. Internally, several officials suggested scaling back the pressure campaign. But Musk wasn't interested in scaling back. He sent a new message through unofficial channels. It offered undisclosed support to internal figures willing to push for leadership change. The implication was clear: if Traoré wouldn't sign, someone else would. Burkinabe intelligence intercepted the offer within hours. Traoré read the transcript, then placed it on the table. This is the moment they stop negotiating and start replacing. His advisors waited for instructions, but he didn't give any. Instead, he said, "Let the people see this." That evening, the government released the intercepted communication on national television, names redacted, but the intent unmistakable. Support available for those prepared to change the current administration. The reaction was immediate and fierce. In villages and cities, people marched through the streets, not with anger, but with drums, flags, and chants of, "We are not for sale." In the capital, an entire neighborhood painted the phrase across its rooftops so it could be seen from above. At midnight, Traoré stood alone on the balcony of the presidential palace. Far in the distance, he could hear the sound of drums echoing through the city. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Now they know. This is not just leadership. This is a line they cannot cross." The following morning, international pressure shifted again, but this time it wasn't only political. Major tech journals and media outlets started publishing hit pieces against Traoré, accusing him of falling into authoritarian populism and isolating his nation from technological progress. One headline declared, "Burkina Faso turns away from innovation." Inside a Silicon Valley boardroom, Musk scrolled through the articles with visible satisfaction. Perfect. Make it look like he's afraid of modernity. He sent out a short tweet that quickly went viral. Some people fear progress because they can't control it. Back in Burkina Faso, the articles drew a different response. Students at the National University, many of whom studied engineering and computer science, organized an open assembly on the campus lawn. Hundreds showed up. Instead of protesting, they carried makeshift prototypes of solar-powered devices and hand-built battery systems. One of the students stood up and spoke into a cracked microphone. "We don't fear progress. We fear exploitation disguised as progress. There's a difference." The speech was streamed online and spread across the region. Within hours, students in Mali, Niger, Ghana and even South Africa posted videos under a single hashtag. #OurFutureOurTech. That evening, Traoré visited the campus unannounced. Students gathered around him, not asking for promises, but offering solutions. One group presented plans for a locally built battery assembly plant using regional minerals. Another showed designs for a decentralized energy grid. Traoré listened carefully, then simply said, "Then let's build it." Not as a message to them, but as a message to ourselves. As he walked back to his car, a student handed him a hand-painted sign. It read, "We don't need their permission to innovate." He folded the sign carefully and kept it. Within days, the energy on the ground turned into action. University engineers partnered with local mechanics and rural cooperatives to start constructing small-scale battery units. They weren't perfect. Some failed. Some overheated. But for the first time, power came from within, not from imported systems but from Burkinabe hands. News of the initiative spread well beyond the region. A group of South American scientists sent open-source schematics for lithium conversion. An Asian tech collective offered to advise, free of charge and without ownership clauses. It wasn't charity. It was solidarity. Musk, watching the reports from his California office, slammed a report closed. "They're crowdsourcing development," he muttered. "That's not a government. That's a movement." The pressure campaign began to backfire visibly. Markets that were supposed to choke Burkina's economy saw no collapse. Instead, local production increased and regional partnerships strengthened. The same investors who pulled out now watched from a distance, seeing a new model emerge, one not dependent on corporate contracts but on regional self-determination. Traoré convened a summit with youth delegations, tribal elders, engineers, and farmers to draw up a national resource charter. The room was filled with blueprints, laptops, and elders holding handwritten notes. No one shouted. No one lectured. They planned as one. By nightfall, a draft charter was completed. At the bottom of the document stood one sentence, written in bold. Africa works for itself, and no one else. Traoré signed it, and then passed the pen to a young female engineering student. She signed next, followed by an elder miner, a farmer, and a schoolteacher. It was no longer a government decision. It was a collective declaration. The final message came not from Silicon Valley, but from the people of Burkina Faso. At sunrise, crowds gathered in Independence Square once more, holding up the signed National Resource Charter for the world to see. There were no political banners, no anti-corporate slogans. Just a sea of handwritten signs that read, "We build what we need. Not for sale. Africa works for no one." International media tried to frame it as a protest. But what unfolded was something entirely different, a declaration of ownership. Drummers played. Children handed out copies of the charter. Families planted small trees at the edge of the square as a symbol of roots that would not be moved. From the palace balcony, Traoré spoke briefly. Today, nobody is demanding anything. Nobody is begging for investment. We are simply stating a truth. He raised the charter and added, "Whoever wants to work with us, must first accept that we do not work for them." The crowd answered with silence, long, powerful, undeniable. A silence that said, "We understand." Thousands of miles away, Elon Musk watched the live stream on his phone. For the first time, there was no smirk. No clever tweet. Just a quiet moment of realization. Some fields cannot be bought. Some people cannot be hired. Some futures cannot be outsourced. He set the phone down, and said nothing. That night, across Burkina Faso, the lights stayed on, not because of imported electricity, but because small battery units built by local hands finally connected into a working grid. The first light bulb flickered, then glowed steadily. And for the first time in a long time, the future was powered from within. This was never about lithium. It was never about contracts. It was about one question. Who do we work for, and who do we serve? Some believed Africa would always remain a source of cheap labor and silent obedience. They expected us to sign, to bow, to sell. But we answered with something they didn't expect. We build for our own people. We work for no one else. Let every nation hear this clearly. We welcome friendship. We accept partnership. But we reject ownership. Because the greatest form of power is not technology or money. It is a people who finally understand that their future belongs to them.